right? So Joveriah is the daughter of a chieftain. She doesn't want to be a slave. So immediately she negotiates that this is the amount, and so I'm not going to be a slave. I'm going to get my freedom. So Aisha says, so that she arranged to free herself. And then she is speaking in the first person, and she is saying, and she was a halwatun mallaha, which means she was very sweet and very beautiful. And no one saw her except that he was captivated by her beauty. And she was probably around 17, 18 years old at the time. And she came knocking on the door of the Prophet, and this is Aisha's house, right? Asking for help monetarily to get her freedom. So now that she's arranged with Thabit a price, now she's going directly to the Prophet and she said, can you help me out with some bit, and going to other people and whatnot, negotiating where to get the money from, loans, whatnot. After all, her father is the chieftain. Somehow he'll manage to get, her father, by the way, was not taken prisoner. Her father had fled. So her father is not a prisoner with the other people. Her father and the other noblemen have fled, and she is now a captive. And Aisha says, as soon as I saw her, I hated her. Because I knew that the Prophet ﷺ would see in her what I am seeing. It's human nature. I knew that the Prophet would see in her what I am seeing. And as soon as she entered, and she said that, Ya Rasulullah, I am Joveriah, the daughter of Al-Harith, Sayyidu Qawmi, I am basically the princess or the chieftain of my tribe, and you have seen what has happened to me. I have arranged to free myself from Thabit, so help me in this matter, meaning, give me a loan, we'll pay you back, we'll negotiate something, right? But help me out. So the Prophet ﷺ said, what if I give you something better? She said, what? He said, I will free you myself, not alone, forget that, I will free you myself and marry you. He's proposing to her, right? Right then and there he proposes to her. And she agreed to this, and he made her mahr, her freeing her. The mahr was the freeing. That he basically paid the money, and this is not a loan then obviously, and that became her mahr. Now, what happened? The news spread amongst the Ansar that the Prophet ﷺ married Joveriah. Then they said, how can we have the in-laws of the Prophet ﷺ as our slaves? So one by one they began freeing every single captive until all of them were freed down to the last person. Then Al-Harith came back to Medina, and he came back negotiating a ransom for his family and tribe. He didn't know all of what's going on. And he asked for his daughter back. And the Prophet ﷺ said to Joveriah that it is her decision. If she wants to, she can go back. I'm not stopping her. And Joveriah chose, and he gave her the right to go back. Now this is a technical point. And from this the fuqaha derive that the husband has the right to give the wife the right of divorce for a time period. That if the situation is very tense, but the husband does not want a divorce, right? He can tell the wife, look, think about it, and if you really want it, then the decision is yours. And he can say, I give you an hour or a day, or give a time period. The decision is yours. So he's handed over the right of talaq to his wife. And this is in essence what the Prophet ﷺ is giving to Joveriah. That the decision is hers. If she wants to, she can go back. That I'm not stopping her. And the Prophet ﷺ was like that. He never, astaghfirullah, he did with Zayd, his own adopted son. Look at what he did. Remember the story, right? Zayd ibn Harith, remember the story, right? And he was a slave. Technically, he hadn't been freed yet, right? I'm not stopping. He wants to go back, he can go back, right? So Joveriah said, of course, I want to stay with you, Ya Rasulullah. And so, Joveriah remained with the Prophet ﷺ. When Al-Harith saw his own daughter willingly choose the Prophet ﷺ over him, this affected him so much, he embraced Islam. Like he couldn't believe his own daughter is choosing to remain with the Prophet ﷺ, and this affected him, like there must be a reason here. And so Al-Harith embraced Islam. When Al-Harith embraced Islam, the whole tribe embraced Islam, because he's the chieftain, and that's the way they were back then. The whole tribe embraced Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ made him the leader again, because after all, he was their leader, gave him back all of the wealth and the sheep and the goats and the camels, right? So they all returned back to status quo as it was, except they're Muslims now. Can you believe the beauty of this story? Wallahi, it's just one of those amazing stories, right? Everything is exactly the same, except that Joveriah is now wife of the Prophet ﷺ. Harith is the chieftain, their animals are their animals, their camels are their camels, their property is their property. Now they're Muslim. And this shows us the real meaning of what is qital and jihad fi sabilillah. It's not for ghanima, it's not for wealth, it's not for power. They saw the beauty of Islam. Nobody forced anybody, right? Nobody forced anybody. But they see the reality of this faith, they embrace it, and they go back exactly as they were with the added beauty of Islam. And Aisha comments that I don't know of any lady who brought more blessings to her tribe than Joveriah. Like one lady's decision to marry the Prophet ﷺ, it was an entire catalyst. Look at what happened after that, right? And this shows us the wisdom really of the entire concept, as we said, of jihad, of even the multiple wives of the Prophet ﷺ. Joveriah, by the way, was known for her piety, for her righteousness. She was one of those who fasted and who did a lot of charity. And there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari about her, that once the Prophet ﷺ visited her on Friday, and she was fasting on Friday. And he asked her that, did you fast the day before or the day after, or are you intending to fast the day after? And she said, no, I'm just fasting today on Friday. So he told her, in that case, do not choose only Friday as a day of fasting. We know in our Sharia, we don't specialize Friday for fasting. He said, if you want to fast a day before or after, join it with something, right? So this is Joveriah, she's just fasting on Friday. Also, once the Prophet ﷺ prayed Fajr from her house, so he spent the night at her house, he went to pray Fajr, and he stayed a long while, and she was in her musalla area doing dhikr. He returned in the middle of the day when he finished his talking with the men, and there she is sitting in the same place still doing adhkar. So he asked her, have you remained in the same place since Fajr? She said, yes. So he said, should I not tell you of a dhikr that if you do it, it will give you all of this reward that you have done? So she said, what? So he taught her, Subhanallahi adada khalqihi wa zinata arshihi wa rida nafsihi wa midada kalimatihi. Right, this is Joveriah. This is the Joveriah. He taught her this beautiful dhikr that all of us should memorize. The dhikr of 4, 5, 6 hours will be done if you say it properly with iman and ikhlas. This simple phrase, Subhanallahi adada khalqihi, the number of His creation. وَزِنَةَ عَرْشِهِ, and the weight of His throne. وَرِضَى نَفْسِهِ, and the pleasure of Himself. وَمِدَادَ كَلِمَاتِهِ, and the ink of His pen. Subhanallah, to all of this, to the extent of all of this. And this is what he taught Joveriah. Joveriah lived a relatively long life. She died around 50 Hijrah, which is the same year, by the way, that Hassan died. I forgot to mention Hassan died 50 year as well, 50 Hijrah as well. Joveriah died in the 50th year of the Hijrah at the age of around 65 years old. And the marriage of Joveriah really shows us some of the primary wisdoms of the multiple marriages of the Prophet. In particular with Joveriah, it is very clear that there is a huge potential and wisdom to be gained. Now, what if somebody says, what do you say about her beauty and her youth, and was this not something that the Prophet was interested in? Here we have some of those people who say that the Prophet did not have any such desires, that he was above these desires. But frankly, you have to, Aisha knows her husband better than we do, and she's saying the fact. And I will be very honest here. For me, the perfection of our Prophet ﷺ is to make him a normal man who can control his desires, not to make him into an angel. For me, this is the ultimate role model, right? Some of us, we have this connotation or notion that the Prophet ﷺ is somehow superhuman. But this is not what the Quran says, right? إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. He gets hungry, he gets tired. In the battle of Uhud, he's going to bleed. The blood is going to come out, right? And yes, he is a man. And he sees Joveriah, and he sees in Joveriah exactly what Aisha thought he would see in Joveriah. There's nothing haram. You see, the notion of somehow being attracted and wanting to marry as if somehow it's something haram. No, the haram is to do it outside of marriage, correct? What is haram? Being attracted and proposing. And that's exactly what our Prophet ﷺ did. He proposed. He said, what if I, and it's an offer. It's up to Joveriah. She could have said no, right? And when he gave her the choice, later on, she said, no, now that I'm your wife, I want to remain your wife, right? So, personally, and this is the interpretation of many scholars as well, by the way, I don't see any problem. I don't know why some of us as a culture, we feel like as if our Prophet should not be a man. What's wrong with this? Aisha is saying that I knew that he would see in her what I saw. She knows. And Joveriah, why not have this and that? Why not marry her and she is who she is, and also free all of her people and cause them to accept Islam, right? What's the haraj in that? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed for our Prophet ﷺ what He has not allowed for others, and this is something that is well known in the Quran, and therefore there is nothing wrong with saying exactly as Aisha said, and also adding to this that our Prophet ﷺ was also thinking long term, that what's going to happen if I marry the daughter of Al-Harith, and that is all of the relatives of Al-Harith and all of the people of the tribe, they will be given a special status of honor without having to pay a penny to anybody. Because if the people had demanded money from Baytul Mal, the Baytul Mal would go bankrupt, right? But by marrying Joveriah, the message is given that just free these people. And there's no doubt that the Prophet ﷺ saw something in the Bani al-Mustaliq and in Al-Harith that showed him these people have some good in them. And inshallah they'll embrace Islam. And that's exactly what happened. That eventually all of them ended up embracing Islam. And as you said, one of the most bizarre and beautiful small stories of the seerah, right? Where did it begin and where did it end? And subhanallah, this is the beauty of this religion, and explains to us as well, one final point, it also explains to us that the Islamic concept of riq and ubudiyya, which we translate as slavery, wallahi we shouldn't even call it slavery. Because the notions of Islam are so different than